what everyone's doing. And what I love about this group is it's coming from different perspectives. From Tom, we have the programmatic side. You saw that. We also have a brand side, and then we also have the agency side. So I'm going to let these guys introduce themselves to you, and then we'll get to it. So why don't we start with you, John?
Yes, I'm John Lupinacci, digital media buyer at Spectrum Brands.
I'm Matthew Lorton, Director of Paid Search and SEO at Zimmerman. We are a high-velocity retail agency working with some of the largest brands in the retail space in the U.S.
And you might remember me from the last presentation. I'm Tom Burchill, Director of Programmatic at Media.Monks.
All right. Well, okay, so as I mentioned at the top, depending on the age group, depends on where you're going to go, who you're focusing on, that's the channel to go to. So, John, we can just start with you in terms of where are you seeing that? Like, what kind of changes are you seeing and where you need to really focus?
Yeah, so taking a close look at where our brands stand in the space in terms of audience and demographics, and like looking at trends, seeing which age group is engaging with different media channels, and then following those age groups as they move to different channels. As you know, as a new media channel comes out, like TikTok, it's usually a younger demographic that engages, and then after time, the older demographic participates, and then so we're really keeping an eye on those shifts and catering messaging, specific messaging per media channel to stay in tune with the audience.
Matthew?
Sure. For us, one thing that we really noticed is even if there's fluctuation in how people are searching, it's really the conversion rate of the search. So we see across a lot of our larger advertisers, a large proportion of searchers are actually older indexing. So the younger and younger demographics, we see less and less Google search. And even of those searchers, we see a lower conversion rate, definitely more in the discovery phase. So depending on the brand, and everything is client specific, we will choose a media mix or at least a search mix that does lend itself more towards that particular client. So if it's a certain type of retail product, or if it's a fitness brand, we'll adjust the weighting of our search program to kind of fit that demographic, because everything does have to back out to conversion rate and efficiency. So we kind of use that as our guiding light as opposed to one channel over another.
Now, Tom, we all know Tom, coming at it from the programmatic side. So we know that obviously media buys influence search. But so what shifts are you seeing in regards on your end of it?
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're seeing, and again from the programmatic side, is that the fragmentation of search in a lot of ways, including like retail media, stuff like that, is kind of democratizing a lot of search data that was previously unavailable as like a cross-channel strategy. So we see, the ability to access audiences with search built from search data, not from Google, not from Bing, right? Like from retail media partners, for example, that just wasn't available to us before. And it's allowing us to sort of connect the dots a little bit more closely between channels. Which is really great because, in the past it's been that we've been sort of isolated in display, right? Like we're running our third-party thing, we run some display, we hope that it impacts search, like I was just talking about, but there's been a lack of really good ways to integrate channels, and I think that's been one benefit of that fragmentation.
Well, are you seeing with these different channels, are you getting more on the intent side in terms of what audience is doing? Is it giving you more information just because they are becoming more transparent? And when you talk about like a Walmart or something, where you're going there for an RMN.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, using Walmart as an example, there's all sorts of like first-party purchase behavior data that's available to us at the brand level, at the intent level, that can now be distributed to programmatic DSPs outside of like Walmart managed service buys. And that is something that is relatively new and is definitely changing the way that we think about how we work with our search teams in programmatic, and how we, again, try and like sort of unify that strategy and that approach.
Matthew, I want to ask this to you initially. Could you talk about what channels you're having to go to based on the ages? So where are you seeing the most success? I mean, are you still needing to spread it out to different channels?
Yes and no. So in some ways, we rebuke omni-channel when it makes sense for that particular advertiser. And then we'll revisit different channels depending on an expectation. So for some of our clients, Snapchat is actually a really strong performer. We find not just the youngest demographics, but even skewing more towards millennials. Snapchat is a phenomenal medium because it's very engaging. The users that use Snapchat are very loyal to that platform, and they use it extensively. So often we find that Snapchat users translate well into branded search. So we'll typically follow a Snapchat conversion opportunity through branded search. So depends on the advertiser, depends on the objective, but we do find that a lot of social media, particularly Snapchat and TikTok, are kind of taking over a lot of the kind of discovery search for a lot of our retail-based clients.
And John, for you, as far as, because you have different brands within your organization, and talk about how you know what's working, what's not, like what channels are the best for you to invest in.
Yeah, so as it depends by brand, with a large brand portfolio, some of our brands, or most of our brands, have a large brick and mortar presence. So it depends if they already have that share of voice versus if they're a newer brand. The focus really kind of shifts. If it's newer, it's heavier on awareness. But for some of the more established brands, traditional channels like search and social work really well for us. So it all really depends on where the brand is standing in the space and where the share of voice is.
And going back to you, Tom, in terms of, again, on the programmatic side, but as we just talked about, it obviously influences search. How much do you work together with your search team in terms of when you're determining your campaigns?
Yeah, pretty consistently, and really closely. I'd say that we're meeting with, like our search managers on usually a daily basis on any given account where programmatic is present there, and we're talking to them about like what terms are popping really well for them, so that we can translate that maybe into like a contextual segment to activate on programmatic. We're in some ways hoping to sort of like feed that back to them as well in terms of where we're seeing that performance contextually. That can also sometimes influence the way that we're building our supply strategy, right? So if there is, an element of contextual alignment in the programmatic supply that we want to be buying, that can be really important. And then, on the flip side, for measurement purposes, geo holdouts are a pretty effective way to do that as well. And that's something that requires a lot of collaboration with our search team, obviously.
What are you seeing in terms of, as consumers, click on something, or how much do they need to engage? How much before you're going to actually see that conversion or the engagement?
Yes, frequency. As was such a
Let's
a
talk
popular
about
topic
frequency.
yesterday.
We haven't brought that up in a little while.
We were talking about this actually the day before yesterday as well. We're seeing, at least on programmatic, that with an increase in digital activity, especially since COVID, more ad supply available as a result of that. There's just a lot more noise out there, which means that you have to up your frequency, and that attrition has to be a little bit stronger. So on display, we're seeing anywhere between like 15 and 20 before you actually get someone to convert. But I think what's really important there, and going back to some of the conversation yesterday about kind of like bugging the users or the audiences and annoying everyone, there's an element there that's really important to pair the frequency number with like the quality of your audience strategy, right? So like if you're reaching the right audience deterministically, that frequency shouldn't have to happen over like a couple days. It can happen over a couple months, right? But it's just really important to continue that message and sort of build that linear journey with the user, especially again with so much noise out there.
I have to agree with Tom too. We often partner with our programmatic buyers on probably a daily basis as well, and we see frequency actually closer to 30. So for some of our brands, in order to really reinforce that message, it is very noisy, but the channels that they are in, you have to double down in. So we see frequency north of 25 to 30, sometimes within a month to 2 months.
Well, I'm curious also in terms of, you talked about the different channels that you're finding success, especially in social side of it. Does that vary from channel to channel, or does it cross over? Is it maybe one channel then you do the same ad on another channel, and you follow your audience and you see what their path is?
Yes, and we find that translation is really important when you're considering the length of the buy journey. So if you're just buying a new laptop, that's a different buying journey than if you're taking out a gym membership, or if you are looking to buy some beachwear. It's an entirely different journey, but what we find is you can't isolate the channels. The channels are very important to be synergistic. So we often find if we turn off Meta, or if we turn off TikTok, we see an expected decrease in branded search, or we see an increase in our CPMs from our PMAX campaign. So it's the synergy of all the channels that work together. Even if one is leading the other, you have to keep all of them working in some level of your media mix.
Do you do that kind of testing a lot, like turning them off? I mean, Tom had mentioned it even when he did his presentation. Is that something that is pretty necessary to determine the campaign?
Yes, and we're fortunate to have a really robust Google team, and I know a lot of this conference has been, the Bash Google conference, but honestly,
no, not bashing, just alternatives.
Yes, but we have both client-specific Google reps, we have an agency Google rep, we have an Omnicom Google rep, so we work with a pretty cohesive Google team, and we do GeoX studies, we do a lot of isolation independent studies, double blind, and then we often do media mix variable testing as well. So we have, using the trove of Google data, a lot of different variability testing that leads to a lot of kind of outperformance, particularly with high velocity retail clients.
So John, for you, obviously with the different brands, I'm sure depending on the brand, or it depends, that they'll vary, but what are you experiencing?
Yeah, so a particular challenge we face is, so most of the space we focus on in my immediate realm is the pet care and home and garden space, and within that some of the brands are somewhat similar, and within the brands some of the products are similar as well. So keeping like a multi-channel approach and having a strong eye to see where our placements are, and not, I guess, or avoiding competing with ourselves in where we're optimizing. And so that's an important thing, is seeing not only the operations in-house, but for our external media partners is to see, or to keep a close eye as to what the messaging is, where our ads are landing, and to have a fluid approach to be able to pivot and double down or draw back on certain things that are working or aren't working.
Do you rely, do some of the results from one brand, does that help indicate what you then do for another, maybe smaller brand, or?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's one important thing, is that keeping a close eye on what is working and having an active log, and so that you have that future reference to look at what is working and what you can mimic for another brand in the future. Yeah.
Okay. So now let's talk about, success is different for everyone. Sometimes, especially on an agency side, then you have different clients who I'm sure have different KPIs. Talk about that, Matthew. Let's start with you in terms of what is predominantly how your clients are measuring success, and if it's very varied, how does that determine then each campaign?
Sure. So at Zimmerman, we have a trademarked kind of KPI. We call it brand tailing. So brand tailing is driving results immediately overnight while building the brand to get to a better place in the long term. So really what we see as success is, in the immediate, you need to drive transactions, whether that's revenue, whether that's an increase in ROAS, whether that's an immediate brand lift, whether that's site traffic, subscribers, app installs, downloads, funded users, whatever it happens to be, you need to do that immediately. So we adjust our media plans to drive that generally revenue-focused goal within the first 90 days. And then we build in a brand tailing strategy that focuses on SEO, content development, building more upper funnel, because the upper funnel needs to feed the lower funnel, but you need to make sure you win in the lower funnel first so that the upper funnel media is unlocked. I don't want to be building an upper funnel media plan or using upper funnel tactics under the guise that I need this to drive performance. It needs to be the long tail, client buy-in, agency driven objective of building the brand over time while driving those immediate transactions.
A little like what Michael was talking about in terms of, so you first will look at that lower funnel, how people are responding, how you're getting that. But then, because again, that's difficult to sustain when you are just focused on conversions. So then that helps determine then how you then, do you tend to find more mid-funnel? Is it becoming that more so for clients? I feel like I'm hearing that a lot.
Yes, because what we find is a lot of brands, at least some of the larger brands that we work with, awareness isn't the problem. You're aware of the brand. And even then, once you've gotten to the brand site or to the landing page, conversion rate is not the problem. It's that consideration set. So a lot of our brands are They're larger, they're in very competitive spaces, very competitive verticals, and so you need to win in the differentiation. So, making sure that all the value propositions are well known and they're broadcast to the audience. You need to kind of win in that consideration phase. Mid-funnel can be everything from non-branded search. It can be performance max. It can be audio. It can be a Hulu buy. It ranges on what it is, but that's really where the challenge is. Yeah, you can't win a war if you don't win the first battle, but you also can't win a war if you don't have a good strategy for what happens after you win that first confrontation.
So Tom, now for you, what is your KPI? I mean, because again, you're working with your search teams very closely.
Yeah, I mean, I would strongly agree with everything Matt said. I mean, we see a lot of variance across all the different types of goals that clients do want to reach for us, and I think that even with some of our larger advertisers, again, Matt, to your point, we see the segmentation of campaigns into different KPIs, and I think that's really useful, right? Because we don't want a really upper funnel CTV buy necessarily to be posed as driving ROAS, for example. So we do want to put everything in its right place, and yeah, I think I would just generally agree.
How about for you, John?
Yeah, so taking a large look at the mid-funnel and seeing where our non-brand campaigns are operating, and are we reaching out to the audience in the right way? Are we grabbing their attention? Are we meeting their values and what they're looking for? So that's one, and that's a big focus, and obviously at the granular level, you're looking at click-through rate, view rate, depending on if it's search, video. So that's really is taking a look to see if our messaging is aligning with the patterns in how our consumers are searching for our products.
Well, and also in just terms of harnessing that kind of that AI, like we've been talking about obviously a lot throughout. I mean, the focus on Thursday was very much AI and automation, but it's trickled in throughout. Are you guys leveraging that as well in terms of with these campaigns, and how is that impacting or helping you in reaching your audience? Let's talk with John.
Yeah, so with AI integration, obviously, one important thing that we did in FY23 is keeping a close communication with our media partners, and obviously everyone is trying to optimize with AI within Google, whether it's Meta. So that's one thing, is staying up to date and seeing where operations are and exploring what would work for us. But ultimately, with all the tools that are out, whether that's ChatGPT, Midjourney, or et cetera, is that storytelling is always key. So utilizing those tools to be able to connect with the consumer, and assisting our operations and making it easier for us to form a message, and yeah, just using the tools that are out there right now and staying up to date with how it's all developing.
Well, and Matthew, since you obviously have different clients, you have different needs, and AI, as we've been talking about, really helps you to know your audience better, really find out much more information and more quickly. So how is that impacting with your different clients, and what your campaign looks like, what channels you're going towards?
Sure. I would even say we really use AI as a means of drilling down into the data that would take a long time for a human analyst, and it gets rid of their bias. So we've built custom scripts that run behind even our Google Ads campaigns that on an hourly basis are updating keywords, they're changing match types, they're pausing ineffective keywords, they're setting caps. We even run some SEO and paid search scripts that run in real-time cost session analysis to see what's the right blend of not only brand and non-brand mixes, but also how much we should, which keywords and queries we need to adjust bids on relative to changes in page rank on a weekly basis. So we really use AI to do a lot of the bulk work, but also to reduce the amount of human bias that can go in, because a lot of our team would be active buyers for our clients, and so we don't want to get into a mode where we're adjusting our strategy and our ad messaging and our copy based on our own perception of how we should perceive the brand. So we use AI to do a lot of that lifting for us, so that we can make more strategic decisions on what we're seeing, what's working well, and also making human connections between prospective customer and advertiser based on a nice human touch.
How much are you needing to adapt? I mean, like, are you able to do that quickly as far as what you're seeing, what AI is then, I mean, giving you what keywords are working, for instance? And then are you able to jump in and quickly pivot and do what you need to do?
Using, with different API connections, and we're actually very fortunate, we have a very robust business intelligence and data science team. So utilizing all the members of those teams plus our ad operations team and then also our internal search and programmatic teams, we're able to really harmonize what would normally be very disparate, call it owner groups, and bring it all together so that the performance of each of those mediums is a lot better than it normally would be. Because normally Search Console is kind of its own entity, and integrating things with the Google Ads API takes a lot of time. It takes dev support. But if you integrate, AI-driven custom scripts, you're able to enable different things that only marketers you would think this would be a helpful thing to have, but to actually build it in real time without needing dev support, I mean, that's truly, really impactful.
Well, let's go to you, Tom, in terms of, we're talking about buys and really being able to, in search terms, but how about creative? Is impacting, are you using AI for that as well?
Yeah, I mean, I think honestly, AI is like everywhere in our business. It's kind of crazy, and it's cool that it's been so front and center over the past year or so. But yeah, a lot of these things have been around for a while. In terms of the creative, I know our creative team is, similarly to some of the presentations yesterday, using like Midjourney, for example, to like do some of the image generation, at least for concepting. I know that saves them a lot of time, and in a lot of ways, a lot of cost, which is great. I do think, in terms of like the media buying perspective, there's really not a media buying platform out there that doesn't have some sort of AI media optimization tool already built into it. And it's interesting to see sort of where, people on my team, for example, will trust certain algorithms or certain AI tools a little bit more than others, depending on sort of what they're more used to or like what settings they feel comfortable sort of really leveraging to get the AI to do what they want. And I kind of think that's where, a lot of like the human element still comes in there, which is there are so many different directions that AI can go when it comes to media optimization. And really telling it what you want it to do is kind of the name of the game. That's how you are good or not good at AI, I think, right now.
Well, and even they focus on that, I don't know if it was Annie who said it, but about the prompts, like just getting that right, giving the right terms and what you need, because it can go astray if you say the wrong thing. But I wanted to go back to you, Matthew, in the sense of when you were talking about the terms that were coming out, are you finding that more the branded terms or search? It's Saturday, but are you finding that's working better, or more the long form, or more the non-branded? What's working the best, or what are you seeing that's coming?
Sure. So what our internal team developed, we call it a semantic keyword expansion. So what this really does is we developed a script that looks at the evolution of the query. So I personally believe no one searches like find a gym near me. I mean that sounds like a good keyword, but that's not how people search. That's how Google thinks you would search in 2006. So we really bake in the semantic analysis to see, like, conversationally, using voice and other means where people speak more natural search. What does that keyword look like? What does that keyword volume look like? And it's a lot higher than you would think. So building in that semantic expansion and then using that on a broad and exact match kind of ratio within an ad group, you're able to win on those exact, and then you're also able to expand in broad, and then Performance Max can kind of pick up that incrementality, that little sand between the rocks, and all together you kind of come up with a more cohesive, higher quality score campaign that, the flywheel starts to spin with lower cost per click, better conversion rates, click-through rate, and the whole thing just kind of keeps going on itself.
You're shaking your head a lot, Tom. Do you agree? I mean, I'm sorry, John. Yeah. Again, it's Saturday.
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, it all depends, like, by brand. Obviously, we have. It varies within the space and pet and across home and garden, and it really all depends, like, how really. Taking a look at how consumers are searching for it, or searching for our brands, and is it more, are they looking for the best product? Are they looking for the most valuable product? Are they looking for DIY-driven queries? Like, it all depends on, taking note of that and, like, honing each sector of how the consumer is, searching for a particular brand or a product, and and targeting that and narrowing that down. Yeah.
And Tom, you are also shaking your head. Anything to add to it, or pretty much a ditto?
No, pretty much a ditto. Yeah, I agree.
Okay, well, we're going to obviously open up to you guys for questions, but I just want to ask, what's the most valuable thing you've learned? I mean, we are, as we've been talking about, consumers' behaviors are changing. We're changing what we're doing for search. You guys are changing. What's the biggest learning? And let's start with you, John.
Yeah, so as I'm part of an in-house team for a CPG company, we have a lot of in-house operations as well as hiring externally to help optimize. So with that is the most important thing is keeping a cohesive messaging approach and to make sure that we have an eye on what the operations are across media channels, because a lot of the time it's easy to, when you hire externally, to divest the authority of building strategy and messaging, and sometimes you don't take a look, or sometimes brands or clients don't take a look at where the operations are externally, but keeping an open line of communication to see what the reporting is looking like, what the messaging is, and being able to have that open communication to shift if you need to. So it's really just an over-encompassing eye on everything, rather than just divesting something out and trusting that your media partner is doing exactly what you hope would help optimize your brand the best way, but really taking an all-hands approach across the board, and
More holistically.
Right.
How about you, from Matthew?
Yeah, I would say honestly, there's a couple of things. I would say don't get caught up chasing too many rabbit holes. There's a lot of noise out there. There's a lot of opportunities to improve search and to look into new avenues of where people are searching. But you have to remember, just because you've carved out an audience and you think there's a certain click stream, a certain path, a certain buying journey that they go through, a lot of the times people are more similar than you would think. People are going to follow similar trends. People use the same mediums to find things. Google is still massive. Amazon is still massive. And this is still the origination of where a lot of search happens. So yes, there are new opportunities. Yes, there's a lot of partners. Yes, buying streams can fluctuate based on the product or the service that you're advertising. But don't get so caught up in the idea of audience segmentation and hyper focus and hyper personalization on these particular audience IDs, because ultimately people are still people. And yes, there's a range and you have a different lifestyle and a different everything that makes you is unique, but in a lot of ways our means of finding things, we're still products of our environment. So we still go to Google, we still go to Walmart or Amazon to start our search. So don't get so caught up in the idea that you need to personalize every buying journey, when really a lot of people stay on the same track.
Okay, and then Tom.
Yeah, mine's going to be short and kind of self-serving, but for everybody, search out there, work with your programmatic teams and your social teams. Things are changing quickly. There are a lot of unlikely platforms and partners that now have access, again, to a lot of this data, and honestly, some of this inventory that they just haven't had before. And if you're not working together across the different media practices, there's a strong chance you get left behind in a lot of those conversations.
Well, and you mentioned earlier, I just want to, before I let you guys, retail media networks, and I don't want to just, I want to sort of add to that. How is that, because consumers are now searching there, how is that changing the way consumers are looking, or how a brand should then consider what they're doing in terms of the search?
Yeah, I think there's just a lot more opportunity to capitalize on each individual audience, right? So these aren't necessarily new people that we weren't able to see before some way, but we now are able to see more of them. So it's sort of filling out that footprint even a little bit more. And again, if you're working with across all of the different media buying types and channels and practices, you'll do a better job at reaching that user, whatever your priority is, in more places, and have a better chance at building that linear journey more succinctly.
I mean, do you think it's changing the audience perspective, like the consumer, the way they're looking, if they're looking at a Walmart as a search engine kind of thing? How has that changed the way you're then looking at the audience and how to attract them?
Yeah, I mean, I think we're working a lot more with our commerce teams than we ever were before, right? So each platform is a little bit different. They have different hoops you need to jump through to get approval to deliver on their endemic inventory. They have, or use their audiences in a decoupled offering. They have different requirements for measurement. They have different methodologies of measurement. So I think as far as like how we do that, it's really specific depending on the retailer that you're focusing on. But for the user, again, it's just another opportunity to get in front of them when they're showing some really valuable behavior, right? That's about as close to the purchase action as you can possibly get in intent.
Which is why I think it's so important to not get too caught up in individual channel performance and to really look at the overall marketing plan and seeing the success. Because again, all these there's so many different ways shoppers and buyers can start their journey, consider different parts of why they want to buy a product or a certain service, and then when they finally do convert, I think it's unfair to say, search always outperforms, or this is the best channel, or then it's Meta, then it's Snapchat, and then it's TikTok, and then CTV and audio, they're not performing as well. You need to look at everything all together and synthesize your different KPIs and your different measurements of success into the overall holistic, call it acquisition, because that's really how the buyer operates anyway. Kind of align your measurement plan to how consumers actually either purchase and then repeat purchase your different products.
Because it's never one spot. Like it's a path. It's definitely, you don't know where maybe they first saw you in a CTV ad, but then they Google search or whatever it may be. So really it's about looking at it holistically.
And there's no silver bullet for measurement. I mean, there's different tools, there's north beams, like there's different things that can kind of help you harmonize all that together. But ultimately there's a degree of mystery, which is the chagrin of many of us marketers. But honestly, that's where it's just, you have to work with your stakeholders, your clients, and understand that this is a complex journey. You have ranging products, and people are complex, but also people are somewhat straightforward in the way they want to approach. They want to buy something. They're not trying to overcomplicate their lives. So don't overcomplicate your measurement plan, because you're honestly just making more work for yourself to derive potentially less meaningful insight.
All right. Well, first of all, round of applause. You guys have been great. So do we have any questions for any of them?
I know. Right. High knees, high knees, high knees.
Hi, Mandy Rassi at Michaels. There's been a lot of conversation this morning about the channels all working together and how the upper funnel then helps to benefit the effectiveness and efficiency of the lower funnel, or more like natural search. Do you think about it any differently for something that is a net startup versus an established business? So I'll tell you, like, we just launched an online-only handmade marketplace a month ago, and we're having a lot of debate in terms of a very limited media budget and what's the role of top of funnel versus more of the conversion driving. We're also private equity owned, so there's a lot of pressure to show a sales ramp fast. And not a lot of patience to wait for upper funnel awareness type of stuff to kick in. So we're having a lot of debates. Like everything you said on the Michaels business, 100% we see. We're having a lot of these debates when we're in more of this like startup very early days. And I'd just be curious for the experts on the stage, how you might approach something like that and if it's any different.
I'd love to start on that one and just say, me personally, I would probably start on the performance side. And the reason that I say that is because in order to make the type of impact that you typically want to make with an upper funnel buy to actually drive results lower down, you still have a lot of spillage in that journey. So you need a lot of investment at the top to actually move the needle at the bottom. And so if you're dealing with limited budgets anyways, I always find it's better to show some sort of, to drive the measurable result there, and then hopefully pick up steam to be able to justify more upper funnel business as you're able to actually prove that you've run into the limit or hit the wall of the finite nature of performance in general.
I would say take a page out of kind of an old trope, but zig when others zag. So particularly in realms where you're not the largest media budget in the space, you don't want to be in channels where there are competitors that have 8, 10, 12x your media budget for that channel. Find those kind of mid-funnel, tough to get started in opportunities, because whether it's upfront costs, whether it's measurements, whether there's more complex integrations that need to occur, there's often incrementality in those different kind of mid-funnel channels where you're kind of blending awareness and you're blending performance in a way that drive both at the same time, because you don't want to get so caught up at the bottom of the funnel where it's a dogfight. You don't want to be, like no one wants to be in a knife fight. You want to be in a strategic place where you're able to pull levers back from those different channels that normally kind of bully your buy into a certain place. So find those kind of bespoke media opportunities that maybe the other competitors overlook because they feel the need to over-index into CTV or to over-index into Meta. Find and challenge your internal team or your agency to kind of dig into those opportunities, because really that's where you find real kind of value for your media investment.
Yeah, I don't think I could say it any better than these two. But honestly, yeah, it's finding where your budget would work best, and even maybe taking a look at where your competitors are operating to see what's working for them, and to see if that's possible to mimic for something like a startup or a less recognized brand.
Okay. Any other? Does that answer your question, Mandy? Okay. Any other questions? All right. Well, you guys, again, were awesome. Thank you so much, and a big round of applause.